Before we move on to other guitarists in the greater wider world, we cannot move on without a notable mention to the guitar solo in the last minute of Cosmic Castaway.
The one that's over the outro, where it's actually just the same little bit repeated round and round and round and round and round.
I mean, watching you play that live last year, first time I'd ever seen that song played live was last year, because you never did it over here anyway. Watching you like shred that last minute on that track is just wicked. It's not iconic.
It's not really a solo though, it's more of a part than a solo. I think that's the thing, is like...
You're being too humble.
No, well, I think Nigel had recorded it originally.
Really?
Yeah, solo. I played it on the album, but then Steve plays it live, because I've got two hands.
Who does it better? Who does it better, Nigel or Steve?
Well, Steve will play it with more flair, but
it's the part.
Yeah, it's the
thing.
What Steve's, and this is actually this real interesting thing, isn't it? Between solo, when you talk about a solo, very often people, certainly guitarists, will sort of feel like that's where it's more improvised, right? Where you're going to jam a little bit and leave the part behind. Whereas actually, of course, like David Gilmour, we're talking, moving to other guitar players who are awesome and amazing, who I think is one of my absolute guitar heroes. He will, while in the same hand he's sort of playing a solo, very often it's almost a part, because it is the same note, and the notes are like you're waiting for that note, right? It's not like, whereas, Jimi Hendrix are also fantastic, but you might never hear the same thing twice, right? It's just literally going to be purely the spirit as it comes, which is great and beautiful and wonderful. But so, I mean, I don't think that part on Cosmic Castaway is quite Dave Gilmour-esque, but it's a part that, yes, it's a single note that's solo, but it's a
written sort of melody to suit that specific part of the song.
Doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It just means that it's got this, you're listening for the musicality of it, not necessarily the soloing nature of it. Yeah, there it is. And there's a lot of gated, choppy stuff in the background of that one.
So good.
That's very much a part, because you could actually play a solo over that, you see. With scales and all of that. And it would be way too much, but to me, that's what a solo would be.
Go on, Dave Gilmour's best.
That is a part.
David Gilmour's best guitar part?
Oh, I mean, how can you... I mean, Comfortably Numb. I mean, come on, it's like... I mean, there are two solos in that which are just astonishing. Yeah. I actually saw Pink Floyd for the very first time in 1990 on the Delicate Sound of Thunder tour, which is, I guess, when he took the band for the first time and they did that big stage show, which was kind of a bit groundbreaking, I guess. And I saw that at the London Arena, as it was called then, and it was just stunning. It was one of the best things I'd ever seen. And, waiting for that solo. And then I actually preferred that version of Comfortably Numb to the album, which is Going Some, because the album version was astonishing. And then so I mean, I don't know, there's so many amazing things, but that would definitely be one of them.
Pink Floyd are right up there as the pinnacle of guitar bands. Like, there's a level to that band that were just crazy good. Steve, what's your kind of favourite guitar part that you have heard or listened to in songs? What's the bit that jumps out? Probably
Stevie Ray Vaughan, I think, having grown up listening to so much, especially his live stuff. And if there's one song from him, I think it would have to be Life Without You, which you probably don't know, actually. But if you go on YouTube and check him out playing live, Life Without You, there's like loads of versions on there. And it's like, God, when you think of like the feel that people have in songs and stuff, and you just watch and listen to what he's doing and singing, actually, the amount of feeling is incredible, off the scale, and not all of it, it's not particularly fast stuff. A lot of it, it's completely about how it's feeling in the band and stuff. And definitely check that out. Nice. I was having a chat. I was asking the question to a couple of people at work today, and somebody said to me, "Thing that Lenny Kravitz did that wasn't Are You Gonna Go My Way is his best guitar work." And I went, "Are you mad? That's like his most iconic guitar part." And they were like, "No, because if you listen to his other stuff, a lot of it is quite rhythm. A lot of it is more chilled, a little bit lower, kind of funkier. He got notable for that one track."
because he had the flying V and it was all kind of the image thing. And it suddenly became like quite an iconic guitar like version of him.
Right.
But all his other stuff is way more chilled out. And I thought that's quite an interesting way of thinking about it.
Like Let Love Rule.
Yeah.
Really, it's not recorded and it's not as produced sonically, but it's like, that's banging it out. That was probably late 80s. So I think he built momentum up, and that's why he had a big enough fan base at that point that's what took it off, and radio picked up on it. Let Love Rule was being played for, a bit around that time and was, well known among guitarists and stuff, but it never went really big. But if you listen back to his early stuff, it's like he was doing it then, And there is
incredible guitar player. The other one I was thinking of was I remember like my dad used to listen to a lot of Hendrix, right? And it's kind of an obvious one, like it's so kind of cliche, but most people would go like, oh, Voodoo Chili. I remember it was Watchtower that I remember.
Oh yeah, that's my favorite song
distinctly as like that
where
guitar
he uses his ring to do the slide. That is one of my favorite. The sound of that is just so beautiful. I mean,
incredible.
For me, then there's a whole host of. I mean, obviously there's those sort of guitar players, right, who have been major influences and massively so. But for me, then there's a whole other strand of stuff that has fed in and stuff which I really have maybe not gotten to grips with as much as I want to. So there's still room to develop, right? But I also love like My Bloody Valentine.
Yeah.
So the guitar work on that, oh my God, it's indie, but with such power, right? And then I also love the Cocteau Twins, right? So that whole chorus sort of like, so you'll hear I use chorus a lot. And in fact, I've just had a pedal break on me, which is an early 80s Clone Theory, which is just the best chorus sound ever. And I've got to get it fixed because I can't live without it. But that sort of, and then I don't know if you're familiar with a band much more recent called Drab Majesty, who do a similar type of thing. And I love that whole sort of indie chorusy sound as well as then the sort of more rock oriented kind of things. But in all cases, I guess you're finding people that are pushing the envelope a little bit. They're doing something a little bit different. It's not, I'm always happy to listen to a bit of Van Halen, and I'll even put Joe Satriani on and enjoy a bit of that too. But for me, it's never about the speed. It's about the sound. It's about the tone. Yeah. It's about that kind of creating something new, right? Weird, and that's what I've really enjoyed over the last few years, especially since the band's been sort of really active again, is having that chance and that reason or that purpose of going, I want to play with a sound. I want to actually not just write songs, but develop some sound and do something that no one's done before with a guitar, or at least maybe they did it a little bit, but maybe I can do it more or something, that sort of stuff. And that's kind of fun. And I think there's no limit to that. And that's definitely.
Well, I mean, there've been, I think, sort of every now and again a band pops up that does do that and it makes them, more popular. It's not trendy, but Dire Straits.
Yeah. Mark Knopfler. I mean, good Lord. I mean, that sound was
Sweet Lord.
Something else at the time.
Some of the stuff they were doing on like Sultan's a Swing was like crazy.
Yeah. No. I mean, he was just a great player with a very unique style and sound and, was really good. But, I mean, I enjoy listening to that. That's not something I'd ever tried to replicate, you know what I mean?
I don't think you can replicate it. That's the point, isn't it?
Well, I've heard there are people who love playing that sort of, like, they're into, like, oh, I want to be able to play as fast as that, or that type of thing. That isn't something that has ever, like, reared its head in my mind to sort of do that, right? For me, it's like, ooh, I want to get that sound, or I want to create that texture, or I want to do that thing, is kind of the stuff that makes me want to do it, as opposed to enjoying listening to it, which is...
Have you ever seen someone playing live, Steve, and just gone, like, that person right there is godlike genius?
Yeah, Marco Rossi. And in the village that I grew up with, Mick Taylor, there was the Railway Inn just down the road from where we lived. So we were like 13, 14, and it was supposed to be over 18. Snuck in with the bikers and got to watch Marco Rossi and God knows how many other bands. And particularly Marco was off the scale, just unbelievable live. And he would have this weird technique where he'd play all the upstrokes. It's all back to front.
That's right. Yeah.
So most guitarists are playing like mostly downstrokes and the occasional up ones, and he would play all up on his right hand. And it's like, how are you doing that? And it's like, I remember chatting to him about it once, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I wish I could play like a normal guitarist would." And it's like, that's why he sounds so different. It's because he's got his own style. Same as like Mark Knopfler, he's not using a plectrum, so he's just like using his fingers on the strings, and that makes the world of difference. It's a totally different style. But actually, I'm noticing now that there's more people dropping the plectrum or using a bit of both, like a hybrid thing where they'll hold the plectrum in 2 fingers and then be able to do a picking thing with the spare fingers. And there's a lot more of that happening now as guitarists. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw, I was watching some videos the other day on YouTube of Sam Fender. I mean, that kid's brilliant on every level in my view, and his guitar playing as well is unbelievable. And he will go from, you know, plectrum to finger to just he changes his technique as well. It's so bizarre.
Yeah, and it looks like he's still sort of finding himself with it as well, which is really interesting. He's developing over.
Imagine what he's going to be like in 10 years' time. He's going to be crazy. But yeah, amazing talent. The other one I was going to talk about we did Britpop the other week, Nigel, and we were talking about like
I watched it. Yeah,
right. And then like I kicked myself afterwards because I did not mention the Long Pigs, and I listened to the Long Pigs album afterwards as kind of penance for not mentioning them on the episode, and I was like, holy smoke, this is an entire album. That Sun Is Often Out album, like every guitar piece on that album is like absolutely brilliant. Goes from acoustic to kind of heavy, so it's just brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
That was, you know, so much of Britpop was wrapped up with a guitar resurgence, right? I mean, that, you know, was such a part of it was that guitars were back as a thing.
Yeah.
Which in a British way, I mean, obviously I'm not going to recover all the ground that you covered, but that was definitely a big piece, and it was great for it. And that's one of the things that I think, while maybe we came in on the back end of it, the fact that when guitars were in definitely helped us get there, right? Because at least we were a guitar band, and suddenly guitars were a thing again, which they hadn't always been, or, you know, so yeah, definitely.
And you know, and I think there, in fact, even some bands, I'm not going to go deep into them because I don't want to, but like I think some of the deep cuts on Oasis's work is actually better than the commercial stuff. Like there's a song that they did, like notable mention, there's a song that Noel Gallagher actually released after he, you know, finished Oasis, called Revolution Song. And again, the guitar work on that is probably better than anything that they put on their actual albums. It's crazy good. Yeah, amazing. But the other thing I think is really fascinating as well is you guys kind of went and did it, and we'll start wrapping up in a minute. But, you know, after Britpop and that kind of guitar work, everything got a little bit heavier again, especially in America, because we got new metal and all these other sounds that were coming out. And I think the guitars evolved and they changed and everything got a little bit deeper and a little bit heavier. You know, like My Chemical Romance and all these kind of bands started taking some influences from that period. It's just, it's like an ever evolving guitar feast.
Yeah, long may it continue to evolve, I think is the thing, right? Because that's definitely part of the concern, is sort of like, okay, well, where does it go? What is there still an evolution happening that involves guitars? Is definitely
I think so.
Question. Like, hopefully, I hope that it still finds a place that isn't just, you know, John Mayer is actually a really good songwriter and very good guitar player, but he's not doing anything new with the guitar, right? Apart from selling versions of PRS guitars. But like, it's not like he's taking the guitar to some new place. So I just wonder, and you do see these incredible sort of internet performers who are doing astonishing things. I forget the Italian guy's name, Steve, but he's the one that plays with his fingers you're probably talking about. And there's some incredible players out there, but it's like the players are not connected to songs anymore. You get all these people who are on the internet doing all this incredible guitar work.
Mimicking.
And that's great, but because they're not in a band, they're not connected to actually sort of hit songs. So you get hit songs over here, and then you get guitar players who are popular on YouTube, but the two things are not the same. And it used to be that they would be one and the same. Like when Eddie Van Halen came out and redefined what the guitar was with the Eruption, he was part of a band that had hit songs. So it's not this sort of like, oh, this is cool, but it's like an oddity, and oh, here's hit music. And the two things are totally separate. And that doesn't feel so good as when they're part of the same movement. And I kind of long for some of that. Where
we need some bands again, don't we? We need some proper
band is in a natural place where guitars meet songs, right?
Yeah.
It's like, that's the thing. And that I don't see enough of that. I see some of it, but I don't feel enough of it, or enough of it being at the forefront of enough popularity to actually drive it somewhere, because it's anyway.
It feels like the whole ecosystem is not conducive to doing bands as much, because
Struggle, definitely.
It's really hard to get it together and have a decent outlet for bands, even just to find venues. There's so many closing down and stuff.
Especially when one rocks up and they've got 2 guitar players, and maybe three. Singer picks up acoustic as well.
And with the whole streaming industry, how are you going to fund putting fuel in the van? Off the back of 0.003p.
Save that angst for another
podcast for itself.
That's another one.
There was one thing I wanted to mention, Pete. You were talking about people that you'd seen that sort of, and Steve, you were talking about Marco and so forth and so on. Somebody who I saw who, again, I think you guys were talking about the other day, was Matt Bellamy from Muse.
All right.
And I remember when we did, the very first time they supported us, which was like at a little surfing festival, they were like 17 and they just sounded like a, thrashy, grungy band that was good. And it was like, okay. But the second time they supported us, I think it was at Exeter Uni or Plymouth or something like that. Maybe they did, I can't remember if they did 2 or 3 with us, but they'd had either their first album was about to come out or it had come out, and they were playing some tracks from that. And again, there's a lot of the song Muscle Museum, there's some really interesting stuff happening guitar-wise with a lot of effects, a lot of interesting things. And I remember at the time talking to him about this after the show, and I was just loving what he was doing, and then obviously seeing where that went and the guitar player that he became. And they are definitely another interesting example of a band that both him and Chris, the bass player, have pushed the boundaries of what guitar and bass did, right? They had the sort of the iPad built into the guitar so they can sort of do all that sort of like effects control on an XY controller built into the actual surface of the guitar itself. That's totally new, and that's a great example of a band with songs also pushing the boundary of guitar performance, and the 2 things being part of that same evolution. And I have to say,
do you like that stuff though, or is it really obnoxious?
No, I think there's some great stuff. I think I thought some of their albums were fantastic. Absolutely loved it a lot. Very
Biffy Clyro was another one that they pushed the sound in that kind of stuff.
Right.
I think
I'm too old-fashioned for any of this.
No, you'd like Biffy. Go give it a go. I mean, the other we got to wrap up because we're going to keep going and going and going again. It's a bad habit. I mean, the other band that I discovered, gosh, probably 20 years ago now, almost, was an Australian band called the Temper Trap, and they have a song called Sweet Disposition, and again they were just kind of really pushing the boundaries of guitar noise. Like there was that whole album, I think it's called Conditions. The guitar work on there was like, you have to listen to the album 2 or 3 times because you're not quite sure what you're listening to.
Yeah, nice.
And then when you go back and you research it, you go like, oh, it's just a bunch of guitars. They just put effects and pedals and distortions and all this kind of crazy stuff through it. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
If you're talking about guitar noise, then it's very hard to go a long way far from Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine, which would bring up a whole nother kind of interesting stuff, which again, first time I saw that, my jaw just dropped to the floor. I just was like, what the heck is this? It was amazing. So, lots of inspirational people who've done lots of really fascinating things.
Limelight by Rush.
Good song. 7/4
guitar part.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. We're going to drop one question and then we're going to go. If you had to recommend to a listener to go and listen to any song after listening to this, either an Electrasy track or something that you really admire with, like, just in your view, a cracking guitar part or just overture or anything, pick a song. Go.
All right, I'm going to go with Cold Souls by Drab Majesty.
Wow, nice. I haven't heard that, so I'm going to go and listen to that.
There you go.
Steve?
I'm going to go Kevin McDermott Orchestra, KMO, Bedazzled.
Oh, 2 absolute, bizarre, brilliant.
A lot of people wouldn't have heard these songs.
Amazing.
Check it out, definitely.
Going to check that out. I'm going to go with the first track on Ash's 1977 album. It's now
track.
Yeah. TIE Fighter flies over and then they just rip into about 3 guitar parts and it's absolutely astonishing.
Awesome. I'm going to drop some links for these.
Yeah, we'll drop some links in. Right, chaps, that was a joy. We'll convene another day and we'll probably have another conversation about music and a musical instrument.
Catalogues.
And Sears catalogues. You fucking pervert, Steve. So there you go. Nigel's
Come on,
going to
just
go.
admit it, Pete.
Nigel's going to continue his day. Steve and I are going to go to bed, but not together, because we're in different parts of the country.
You got your catalogue.
I am. All right, chaps. Good to see you, mate.
All right.
Cheers, Nigel.
Cheers, Nigel.